Witchfire has changed a ridiculous amount in 2 years, and at this point it barely feels like the sparse early access shooter it launched as. It's a single-player first-person RPG shooter, where you play as a prayer, a sinner turned supernatural witch hunter. You are sent by the church into territory controlled by a powerful witch. Your end goal is to reach her and kill her. Although, for most of the early access, that story has remained firmly in the background, while the game has significantly evolved around its combat, progression, exploration and RPG systems. But let me first tell you how you spend your time here. You begin in a hub called the Hermitorium. This is where you pick stuff like your guns, spells, melee weapon, and your gear. And then you head out on an expedition into one of the game's regions. Now it's important to say and give credit. These are pretty big handcrafted maps, so not some randomly generated levels. You explore, fight, grab loot, and decide how far to push before heading back. If you manage to leave safely, then whatever Witchfire currency you collected turns into permanent progress. You can of course push further for bigger rewards, and you risk losing it all if you die, though you can return to where you died later and try to grab this back. So every run comes down to how greedy you feel like being. The shooting is probably the game's strongest part, as it should be. It's very fast, it's rewarding, it rewards good positioning and reload timing. It has good sound effects, the movement is fluid, and the movement is important as well, especially the dashing, since running out of stamina can leave you without a way to escape danger. The stamina management annoys some players coming from more mobility heavy shooters, and I can understand this criticism, and the developers have said directly that it is staying. So this is a deliberate design choice. It is not something you can expect getting patched out. The weapons are not generic statistics either. Most guns have their own specific mechanic, a bit closer to how Destiny handles its exotic weapons. So figuring out what to build around a gun's quirk is a big part of the appeal. Your spells support your guns rather than replacing them, and the elemental effects like fire, ice and shock tie into a lot of what you do. The build crafting happens on top of that in several ways. You spend the earned currency on 6 permanent stats. You slot the rosary beads for passive bonuses, similar in spirit to Bloodborne's Kirill runes, and your weapons and spells have upgrade tiers, called Mysteria, that can change how they actually function. Herbert, ich komme später. Each expedition also hands you temporary buffs called Arcana, and you can nudge which kinds show up using something called prophecies. It's a lot of overlapping systems, and the game has needed to add a real tutorial and handbook over time, just to help new players through it all. It's also worth knowing this isn't a loot-heavy game like Borderlands or Diablo. The weapon roster is fairly curated, and the progression is really more about learning what a weapon does, upgrading it, and building around its mechanics. The difficulty here works through a system called Gnosis. Raising Gnosis changes more than how tough enemies are. It kinda reshapes the regions you've already explored, adding new events, enemies and secrets. This is a pretty smart way to make 6 handcrafted regions worth revisiting, instead of simply replaying the same map with bigger health bars. Worth knowing though, you will be going back to those same locations quite a lot, since nothing here is randomly generated. If you need constantly new scenery, that repetition might wear on you a bit. If you do enjoy slowly mastering a place, kind of like how you master a place in Dark Souls 3 for example, since that is also all handcrafted, then that works the other way. And once you're deep into the game, the current endgame is about pushing Gnosis to its cap, tackling the handcrafted challenge dungeons called Witch Vaults, taking on optional hard content called Torments, and pushing the world corruption for extra risk and reward. So there is stuff to chase once your basic progression is over. Story is currently the weakest part of the package, and this is an early access limitation. A recent update finally added real dialogue, quests, and storylines tied to NPCs called Fallen Prayers. But it is early material, and the full narrative including the actual final confrontation is being held back for the 1.0. And yes, that may surprise you, but there's no co-op or multiplayer at all, and that was never planned to change. On the technical side, the game runs well, and it is Steam Deck verified. Right now the game is roughly 85% complete, so it will launch in 1.0 sometime soon. All 6 planned regions and enemy types are already in. Keep in mind that your save compatibility into 1.0 is not guaranteed. So this is a good fit if you want Destiny quality shooting in a single player package, enjoy some Souls-like risk and consequence, and you don't mind digging into a lot of connected systems to build your character. It is probably not for you if you want a complete story right now, a non-stop stream of loot, or any form of co-op.